Hello friends, in this video tutorial let us see the concept of SSAS tabular model. So for this tutorial let us go to SSMS. Now over here we are connected to SSAS 2012 instance, right? Now this instance is having storage mode as tabular. So this is a SSAS instance, but it is not having multi-dimensional storage mode. It is having tabular storage mode and it is shown by this particular symbol. Now as we can see over here, right now there are no databases created in our SSAS server, that is SSAS 2012 instance, right? Now let us go to SSDT. Let us create a new project. Okay, let us create a new analysis services tabular project. Now first of all we'll have to specify the workspace server. Workspace server is nothing but our SSAS server where we want this temporary deployment to happen. So let us specify the workspace server. Now compatibility I will select as 1103. The reason is if we go to our SSAS server and its properties, then we can see that the compatibility level is 1103. Okay, so I will put the same compatibility level in our SSDT. So now it has created the blank tabular SSAS tabular model project and we are having a model.bim file. Now just re-verify whether this property is correct, that is workspace server is pointing correctly, right? Because without this property being set correctly, deployments will not happen properly, right? So that's why as we have verified this property, now let's go and open the model.bim file. So right now we can see that this file is empty. So now let us import data and tables over here. We will import from SQL server. So let us provide the server name. Now we are going to import data from our AdventureWorks DW database. So for this let us get the connection string name, right? So let us paste it. Now let us select the database AdventureWorks DW test connection, right? Next. Now let's go to database, security, roles, copy, paste. Okay, now we are selecting the option that we will select tables and views to import data. So click next. Now let us select fact internet sales table, right? We want to import this data and the related tables. So you click the select related tables button. So it has automatically selected the related tables, right? Now if you want, we can even filter the data over here. So for this we will have to go to preview and filter. Now we can see that in this particular table these last two columns are blank, right? So let us filter them out. So we have removed these two columns from, so we will not import these two columns, right? These are column level filters. If you want, we can even put the row level filters, okay, from here. But right now let's go ahead with only column level filters. So let's click OK and let's click. So now as filters have been applied for this particular table, we can see applied filters written over here, okay, whereas for other tables it is not written. Why? Because we have not applied filters for the other tables. Okay, so now let's click finish. So it has started importing all the tables. Okay, so the importing of all the tables is complete. So let's close. Now we can see that our model.bim file has got now all the tables, right, which have been imported. So now we can go to one of these tables. Let's say we want sales amount, we want the summation of it, right? So we can go over here and select sum. So now we'll have this measure over here. So we have introduced the measure in our tabular model now, and the measure is for summation of the sales amount. Similarly, we can introduce other measures using the formulas, right? So now let us introduce average as the measure. So now we have introduced two measures for sales amount. Now let us introduce some more such measures. Let's say we go to unit price. Okay, so now let us add a measure for unit price. Now we can even introduce KPIs. So let's say right now we have introduced summation, so we can click on create KPI button. Okay, let's go by absolute value. If you want, we can change the values and its labels, right? If you want, we can even change the display symbols that are used to show the KPI. Okay, so now if you want to, now this is a KPI. Okay, this is not the normal measure for sum. So if you want to again introduce sum for this unit price, then what we can do, we can again go and select sum over here. So now this is a measure for summation and this is a KPI. So now let's save everything. Okay, now we can even have partitions in our tabular model. So let's click this, we have clicked this partitions button. Okay, now for fact internet sales table, let us create a partition. Now in order to create partition in tabular SSAS model, we'll have to go to query editor. So let's go to query editor. Okay, now let us specify query over here where order date key is less than or equal to 5. Okay, so we have selected this particular column. Okay, order date key is less than or equal to 5. So let's click OK and OK. So now let's go to partitions again. So this one partition has been created. Now let's create a new one. So if we click on the new partition, then it will copy paste the same query from the first partition. So now we can modify this query and let us put a condition of greater than over here, which means both these partitions will combinedly cover all the data. So let's click OK. Okay, so we have created two partitions for this particular table, that is fact internet sales. Now let us similarly create other partitions for, let's say, for customers. Okay, so customer is having a column for gender, right? So this is a column, right? So it is having two values, male and female. So let's go to query editor and let's introduce a where clause over here where gender equal to M, right? And let us rename this partition to dim customer dash male. So now let us click OK. So now we have created one partition for customer. Okay, now let us, we can even copy these partitions, right? So let us click copy button now and let us rename this partition to female and let us change the gender where clause from M to F. Okay, so now the second partition is also created. That the first one was for male, second is for female. So let's click OK. So now let's click save and let's go and verify. Okay, so let's go to customer. So now we are having two partitions with appropriate queries. Okay, now let's save this. So partitions are now have been created. Now over here we are getting two views, grid view, that is in which data is visible, right? And second is diagram view. So let's go to diagram view. So in diagram view we are having all the tables, but their relationships are shown using diagram. So if we mouse over any of the relationship, then it will show us which are the columns which are part of this particular relationship, right? Okay, so in this way we can see which are the columns that are part of this relationship. Now if we want, we can even create hierarchies. Right now in time dim time there are no hierarchies, right? So let us say we rightly can say create hierarchy. Okay, and let us name this hierarchy as time hierarchy. Okay, let us click enter. So it is updating, finishing. So it has created a hierarchy. Okay, now let us add, right now it has got added one column on its own, right? So let us add another column, calendar year it has added. Now let us add English month name. right? So add to hierarchy, time hierarchy. Okay, so it is again updating, finishing. So now our time hierarchy has got two columns, calendar year and English month name. So let us save everything. Now let us go and deploy this particular cube. Okay, so let's go and right click and go to its properties. So let us rename this cube name. So let us call it as OLAP tabular cube. Okay, and let us give other options as default. Important thing is these two checkboxes should be tick 1. Okay, now let's apply. We can go for transactional deployment if we want. We can go for full deployment if we want, right? So all these are options. Let us click OK, apply. But now before going and clicking this deploy link over here, I want to show one more thing. Basically I have added in the base database, okay, I have added a login, this one. Okay, now as we had used this login for our multidimensional OLAP, similarly I have added this login for our tabular OLAP. Okay, now the name of the instance was differing by only the last digit, that is the name of the instance in case of multidimensional was SSAS 2014, whereas the name of the instance in case of tabular is SSAS 2012. So I have just changed the name of the instance and created a login with that name. Okay, and I have given necessary required permissions for this login on this database, okay, instance, that is on the base database or relational database instance. I have provided the necessary permissions for this login. Also I have added this login in my SSAS database also, that is if I go to security, then I have added this login in my SSAS database also. Okay, now click OK. So now we can go and right click and say deploy. So deployment has happened successfully. So let's click close, let's go to database. So now let's right click and say refresh. So we are having two database. This one is temporary in nature, that is if we close our SSDT, and then this is a temporary workspace, so it will no longer be available, but this is a permanent deployment, and this deployment we have done by going over here and clicking this deploy button, right? So now this deployment is permanent. So if you want, we can go and open a MDX query window and fire MDX queries, or if you want, we can go and browse the cube. Okay, now let's say we go to sales amount, right? So we can get the sales amount. Okay, let's say we want sales amount as per product name. Okay, so we can get that. Or let's say we go by customers, and let's say we want sales amount as per gender, or gender and further classification of, let's say, marital status, right? So we can get all these amounts, or we can even make use of our hierarchy that we had introduced in time, right? So let's say we want to know about time, right? Correct. So we can use this cube now, OLAP cube, that is tabular OLAP cube, okay, to query our data. Now we can also go to Excel and analyze this cube in Excel also, similar to the way we did in for multidimensional cube. So we can go for sales amount, okay, over here, and then let's say we want to query based on gender. Okay, let's say we want to query based on marital status, right? Okay, so in this way we can query the data. Okay, fine. So now let's go back to our tabular model, that is tabular OLAP cube. Let's save everything. Now let's go back to our grid view. Now we can see that this time dim time table is actually a kind of date time related dimension, right? So we can go to table, and we can say we can mark this particular table as date table, okay, with its key. So it is updating, right? So once this particular table has been marked as a date related table dimension, then we can go back and verify, right? We can go back over here. Now it is showing the tick mark, that is mark as date table is now ticked. So in this way we can make a particular table or dimension as date dimension, right? Now let us go over here, model, and so we have seen how to analyze in Excel, we have seen how to process, right? We can even introduce perspectives as we had in multidimensional cube. We can even introduce perspectives in tabular OLAP, right? Now let us go to role. Now model view and this in we have seen, right? These are the two shortcuts given over here to switch between diagram and grid view. So in the same way we can switch from here also, okay? So if you go over here and say data view, then we can switch between the views. And let's go to roles, right? So let us add a role. So this window will allow us to add different roles for our tabular OLAP cube. So let us add a role. Let's say role is reader, and let's give permission to read. Let's add a new role of, let's say, processor, and let's say we want to process data with the help of this role. Let's say we want to add a role of admin, and let's say we want this one to be administrator. So we have added some roles over here, right? Now if we carefully observe, for the administrator role everything is grayed out, which means we do not further filter the data access for administrator. It has got data access for all the dimensions. For processor role, no data is visible, okay? So that's why DAX filters do not apply, and that's why everything is grayed out. But if you go to reader role, then we can further give rights and privileges over here. That is, we can specify which all dimensions this reader role will have, okay? So let's say we write a DAX filter over here, let's say false, right? Then this particular role, there is role underscore reader role, will not have any access for the currency dimension, dim currency dimension. We can also provide filtering based on, let's say for dim customer, let's say we write a DAX filter, let's say dim customer dot gender is equal to, let's say, male, okay? Okay, so now we have introduced a filter based on the DAX filter, right? So let's click OK. See, if you carefully observe right now, then when we go to roles, right, there are no roles defined right now, okay? And hence when we are querying based on customer gender, we are getting summation of sales amount for male as well as female, right? We are getting summation of sales amount for both. Now let's go to our role that we have introduced, right? So these are the roles that we have introduced. Now for read role, what we are saying is, for reader, if the role is reader, then it will have access only for, in the customer dimension, it will have access only for the male records, right, where gender equal to male, okay? So now let's click save, let's right click. Now how this particular thing is implemented. So over here there are members tab also, okay? So we can go and add Windows users or groups in this members tab, and if those Windows users come and access their tabular OLAP cube, let's say using any of the tools like directly or using, let's say, reporting services. Okay, but through any of such means, if they try to access this particular cube, then internally their Windows user login ID will be checked, and based on that they will get this particular role based access. That is, if let's say user 1 has been added over here, then if for Windows, then that Windows user 1, if tries to access our tabular cube, then as that member is part of this role, that is reader role, that user will get data access for customers of only type mail. Okay, so now let us click OK. Let me deploy this. Okay, so let me deploy this. Okay, so now let us go to our database. Okay, let us refresh everything. Okay, let us close this and let us again open the browser window. Okay, right, we could have just done a reconnect over here. That is also fine. Okay, after new deployment. Now see, now if we go over here, it is showing us roles, right? So we can change the context in which we are running all these queries. So instead of current user, we can go to roles. Now all the roles are available, and let's say we select reader role. Okay, and let's click OK. Now if you go to our sales amount, see the sales amount has changed, right? And also if you go to customers, let's say go to gender, then we are getting access for data of only those records for which gender equal to M. Okay, so this is the way in which we can restrict the data access for different users. That is, we can try to implement security for our tabular OLAP cube with the help of roles. Okay, and how is it actually implemented? It is implemented with the help of Windows users getting assigned to this particular roles that we have created for our tabular OLAP cube. So I hope, friends, this video tutorial on tabular SSAS OLAP cubes is useful to you. Thank you.